I wrote Finding Flow for one reason. I want to point readers to a life giving, practical way that we can overcome that fear, that inner anxiety that seems to plague most of us, and reclaim our natural inner peace, balance, and wholeness. About 30 years ago, I went on a personal quest. There's got to be a way, was my question, of discovering how do we live a lifestyle that allows us to live in that natural flow of peace, balance, and wholeness. So what I did is I studied the lives of over a dozen ancient and modern spiritual teachers and giants to see, is there a common thread within their lives? Is there something distinct among those spiritual teachers and heroes that allowed them to integrate that peace, balance, that wholeness into their lives? And I discovered there is. And that's what I write about and unpack in the Finding Flow book. If you wanted a shorthand formula of what those lifestyle practices are, you could call it QSCS, quiet time. Taking time each day to enter into the solitude, getting away from the distractions of the world to reconnect with our inner self and God as we understand the Creator. Spiritual reading, taking time each day to read the books and the writings, and today even the podcasts of people a little further than us on the spiritual journey who teach us how we can discover that wisdom, that life-giving spiritual practices that bring us alive. The third is community, surrounding ourselves with a circle of trust of people, a small group of people who inspire us to grow, who nudge us to grow, to help us become our best selves and live that in the world. And finally, a spiritual gifts inventory, looking at ourselves and taking the tests that we can do, one of which is on my website, to discover what are our unique talents and gifts, and how in this season of our lives are we being invited to use them in ways that make us come alive and make the world a better place. That's what I unpack for readers in my book, Finding Flow, Spiritual Practices to Reclaim Inner Peace, Balance, and Wholeness. I do it in a fun way. I kind of poke some fun at myself with some personal stories, but I also integrate the wisdom that I've learned over the years from these spiritual teachers and invite you to incorporate those practices into your lives so you too can find what I call the divine flow in our lives and experience the joy, the happiness, the peace that we all desire. I invite you to pick up a copy of the book and join me on this journey of finding flow. My hope and prayer is the book will inspire you, transform you, and change your lives in life-giving ways.
Brian really writes candidly from his personal experience, using his humor and great honesty that makes the book really relatable to anybody, no matter where we are on our spiritual journey. So for me, I think there are people who are very opinionated about how to pray, how to get closer to God. And I think Brian does a really terrific job of showing that there are a variety of ways to do that. There is a process of arriving at the best way for you individually. And I think that whole process is really good, but I also found that I could kind of pick and choose things that work for me best, given where I am right now. And so I really found the book really well done, and I would highly recommend it no matter where folks are in their journey.
Hi, I'm really happy today that I get to talk about this new book. Brian wrote this book recently. It's called Finding Flow, Spiritual Practices to Reclaim Inner Peace, Balance, and Wholeness. And isn't that what we all want? And when I read it, I thought this is really a helpful book. I know it gave me new ideas for my spiritual journey. And, Brian tells his own stories. He talks about mentors along the way. He gives very specifics with his guidance. And I valued that. It makes it a helpful book to read. So as an example, he told a story when he was in midlife and so busy with work and kids, and he had buddies, but he just realized he didn't really have any close, particularly male friend that he could really talk to, share deep things. And then, as God is wont to do, he provided him a book about spiritual friendships. And it really, stirred up something. And I think he realized he was missing that. And then a couple years later, random meeting with a gentleman at a conference. And ever since, those two have been really close spiritual buddies that you can share and grow together. It's such a gift. And one of the things he talks about in his list of practices is spiritual reading. And it's just I think, a perfect example. That book kind of appeared, a grace, right? He read it, he took it to heart. And when he had opportunity to meet the potential spiritual partner, he was ready to go because he had read that book. And there's many tips and advice like that would help you, like it helped me to move forward on my journey. We all want to be more at peace and be whole and be balanced. It's not easy. And I think if you read Brian's book, you'll get some great ideas how to achieve that and be closer to God. So I recommend it.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a mother and a therapist. I do outpatient therapy, and I just wanted to give a few of my words about Brian Plechta's book, Finding Flow. I read through the book, and I would suggest reading it kind of slowly. The way I did it is I paused at the many different practices Brian offers in Finding Flow. So I just found it to be really helpful. It's kind of littered with all these practices that are meant to get you in touch with God and get you in touch with your own flow and dig deeper into yourself. And so what I found to be really helpful reading the book was pausing at those practices and actually giving them a shot. Really practical practices, not complicated, but useful for sure. I found the book to be practical but not boring. Brian has his own kind of story within the book that helps you relate to it in a more maybe universal way. You're able to, for me at least, I was able to kind of see myself in Brian's story. Obviously, we have different stories. I'm a young female, he's a middle-aged man. But for me to be able to, see some of the truths that were underlying those stories was really helpful, kept me engaged in the book. I think the book promises exactly, the title, Finding Flow, Spiritual Practices to Reclaim Inner Peace, Balance, and Wholeness. For me, I found like that was very much delivered on. It was a simple book, easy to read, easy to understand. And the whole time I was wondering, okay, like there's so many good things in here. How am I ever going to remember this? How am I ever going to be able to come back to this practice in my daily life without, just focusing on one piece at a time? But then at the end, Brian wraps up with this nice, concise list of, these practices that are really useful, that other people have found are useful. Something that I really enjoyed about the book too was that it wasn't just Brian's perspective. Every other page had a new name, a new reference of other people that are doing this work and that have found flow and are using these practices to find flow and stay in flow with their creator, their God. So it felt well referenced and connected to lots of different spiritual practices and people who are doing this work, which I thought was really unique and nice as well. So my overall review is that it's a really practical guide that keeps you engaged, that is just littered with these invitations to go deeper and figure out what works for you as far as finding flow and living in that grace.
Well, I'm Father Joachim Lally, a priest of the Paulist Fathers. I enjoyed reading Finding Flow. First of all, I like the title. I love the concept of flow. I like it from Meister Eckhart and Richard Rohr and a lot of others. But I found it to be a very practical book in terms of introducing people to this other dimension of prayer. As you know, we have the two kinds of prayer, prayer with words, prayer without words, and we're not too often familiar with the prayer without words. So it gives some common sense introductions to how to go into silence, how to value silence, how to take a sunbath in God's love, experiencing the unconditional love of God. I like the emphasis on the moment-by-moment presence with God. You know, this idea of moment-by-moment living in that presence of love. I like your use of parables, your parable of the tree and its fruits, and looking at the fruit of our contemplation in our daily lives. That's the only way we can really get a sense of the flow, to the extent that it's flowing into our daily lives, not just into our cerebrum, our brain, our analytical actions. I think that we put too much emphasis on the left brain and rather than the right brain, and but the experience concretizes everything, because all we do have is experience, nothing else. And so I think that your book entices people, encourages them, invites them, whatever you want to use, to pay attention to their own experiences, their own prayer life, to find out where is the flow, and how you encourage that flow, where is it ending up, and to be open to its flow being manifested, revealed to you. The word apocalypse means reveal, bringing down the veil, and how your daily life opens that relationship with God up in ways that you ordinarily wouldn't have unless you paid attention. And that's the clue, I think, is that paying. It's not easy because you have to pay. I mean, it takes energy and effort. So I congratulate you. That's basically my offering to you and my gratitude to you for writing this book, Brian. Thank you.
In the last chapter of the Finding Flow book, you'll find a short, concise guide to the 12 spiritual practices that are talked about in the Finding Flow book. That way you can come back to this handy field guide in the book to pick and choose what spiritual practices work best for you, which ones that you integrate into your life help you become your most authentic self. So I invite you to pick up a copy of Finding Flow. It's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Paulus Press, and also on my website, brianplachta.com. My sense is, as you discover the spiritual practices that work best for you and integrate them into your life, you'll find divine flow. You'll sustain the divine flow in your life and discover a deeper connection with your true, authentic self, and experience the God who loves and guides you with unconditional love.